You're listening to Puma Podcast.
Hi, I'm Tatiana Maligro Puma Podcast, and you're listening to Teka Teka. We'll be talking about NAIA in the episode, and we wanted to share some of our listeners' experiences.
So I arrive at the airport at around 9 a.m. and then I get settled at the gate 134B, which is the designated gate for my flight. That's when I heard some of the ground staff. They said na, so walang nakakalapag or nakakalis ng in the airport, in the terminal, I mean, 1 to 4. So you will notice din naman na wala kang makikitang mga announcement dun sa screen per gate na last call or for boarding time na ganyan. Wala lahat.
Siyempre, yung price ng ticket is expensive. So, I actually paid more, like around 8K when I could have, when I could have not paid anything. That was the most painful part. My work is there at the office. So, I really had to go. So, I had no choice. Yung total na tickets ko is like one half of my monthly pala. Ano na siya eh, parang umabot na ng kibali eh. Parang yung whole ticket price ko is halos umabot na ng 18 to 19K.
NAIA is consistently ranked as one of the world's worst airports, but can a new operator help Filipinos get the airport we deserve?
Thank you for waiting Philippine Airlines Sun Flight PR 422 with code Cheryl name on every Sun Flight NH533.
Alam nyo, I have a NAIA horror story of my own. In 2022, I was flying home to Cagayan de Oro during the holiday exodus. Terminal 3 was packed, and 30 minutes na ako nasa check-in line. Bags piled up behind the check-in counters, and they were being loaded into these giant cage-like boxes. That didn't look normal, but I had no idea. So I dropped my bag, passed through security, raced for a seat in the pre-departure area, and boarded. Everything seemed normal until we were waiting for our bags in Cagayan de Oro. One of the ground personnel told us that everyone's bags were left in NAIA. I'm sharing my story because I know many Filipinos have their own NAIA horror stories. And it's a good place to start when talking about how we want our country's main gateway to improve. After all, we're all bonded by these traumatic experiences at NAIA.
So around 11 a.m., I heard the first public service announcement. There's some technical issue in the power outage of the air traffic, so they cannot locate locate on the radar kung ano na yung mga nangyari ng mga flights. And then after 2 hours, around 1 p.m., that was the time na Cebu Pacific sent an email as well as a text message informing me na cancel my yung flight. So they are offering to either rebook, refund.
That was Nash Nashon. He works in Makati City but wanted to go home to Legazpi to be with his family for the holidays in 2023. Remember that? Tens of thousands of travelers affected by the collapse of the airport's air traffic management system. More than 300 domestic and international flights were canceled that night. Airline staff didn't know what to tell angry passengers, information came in dribs and drabs. It was utter chaos. But we know that wasn't the first or the last time that the Ninoy Aquino International Airport was at the center of controversy. And that means Nash and I aren't the only ones who have NAIA horror stories. Here's Terry Redon, convener of public policy think tank InfraWatch PH.
Lagi namang horror story yung mahabang pila doon sa every step of the way, no? First, before they took away the first security screening, so there was a long line there. And then there was, of course, a second heavy line, which is basically the check-in counter. And then for an international flight, the third long line would be the immigration, and the fourth line would be yung security line, no? Yung final screening, no? So all of it constitutes a real inconvenience to passengers, and that has actually been slightly resolved in the last couple of months. First, they took away the first security screening in the international airport.
Passing through NAIA has never been the best experience. In fact, it was ranked the fourth worst airport in Asia by UK-based website businesstravelers.co. It's the third worst airport by British-based consultancy firm Skytrax. You get the picture. With all these issues, the Philippine government is turning it over to new management in September in hopes that the private sector can help them fix it.
Sinaksihan ni Pangulong Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. ang formal na paglagda sa NAIA Public-Private Partnership Project Concession Agreement. Ang kasunduan na nilagdaan ni Transportation Secretary Jaime Bautista at San Miguel Corporation President and CEO Ramon Ang ay hudyat ng simula ng
SMC had participated together with Incheon to make a proposal, and they had won every step of the procurement. So from the legal, substantial, and the financial component of it. No? So basically, we are certain that SMC is committed and bound to whatever infrastructure commitments and technical requirements are being asked by the Department of Transportation to be implemented in the Ninoy Aquino International Airport for the next 15 years and extendable for another 10 years.
Under the consortium agreement between the DOTR and the SMC-led concessionaire, NAIA aims to hit specific benchmarks throughout the duration of the agreement. And part of this entails making the passenger experience better. So this includes cutting the lines at check-in, immigration and security counters, and improving travel to, from, and within the airport. The SMC-led group will also be rehabilitating the 4 terminals so it can accommodate 62 million passengers a year. Currently, NAIA's terminals are designed to handle around 35 million passengers annually, but over 41 million travelers passed through it from January to November last year. Reducing delays is also an important part of NAIA's rehabilitation. One of the key benchmarks in the concessionaire agreement is to speed up the traffic movements to 48 takeoffs and landings per hour. NAIA currently sees only 41 takeoffs and landings per hour. So the faster planes can take off and land at an airport, the faster passengers can get to their destination, and it also helps airlines generate more revenue. Here's Transport Secretary Jaime Bautista with a request for the SMC-led consortium.
Request ko yan kay Mr. Ang na sana bigyan ng priority yung construction ng visual docking guidance system. No? Ito po yung pag nagpa-park yung aeroplano, instead na merong marshal, no? It will be automated na.
San Miguel CEO Ramon Ang also announced plans to build a new 5th terminal for NAIA. More on this after a quick break. Here's San Miguel Corporation's President and CEO Ramon Ang talking about the 5th terminal.
Brand new passenger terminal building that will handle 35 million passenger per year with 50 target to build boarding bridge. Parang 66 feet ang floor to ceiling height niyan. Kita mo, grabe ang ganda niyan. Ingrande talaga.
This could help the consortium reach its goals to boost NAIA's capacity to 62 million passengers per annum. InfoWatch PH's Terry Redon says this is not a part of the concession agreement, but if the terminal does get built, Terry thinks NAIA management should still focus on the current 4 terminals.
So if San Miguel would want to build a new terminal, I think that is within their right to do so. But of course, there is no requirement for them to undertake it because it is not part of SMC's contractual commitment. No? But I think if it's something that they would like to look into, particularly because some of the terminals are actually underdeveloped or already overly congested. No? So as an example, Terminal 4, which is being used for domestic travel, is effectively a very small airport for our current needs.
The SMC-led group's plans are ambitious, and they sound like they will address passengers' most common concerns. But even so, not everyone is on board with their impending takeover. Advocates worry that SMC is just in it for the profits. For example, they say privatization of NAIA may lead to more expensive travel due to higher terminal fees. But Terry believes there's nothing to worry about just yet, since the government will still have a say in how NAIA is run.
We have to be very clear as well that government does not relinquish control over airports, particularly because private operators will still have to be answerable to government regulators. So I'm quite certain that for NAIA, MIAA will still be regulating particular aspects of how NAIA will be run. So I think in terms of terminal fees, concession fees, MIAA will still have some regulatory oversight over the types of fees that will be imposed by SMC over the run of its concession. So we have to look at privatization today as a partnering with the private sector, particularly because there is an absolute lack of capital for government to undertake it at this particular time.
Let's face it, NAIA does need fixing. But it's going to take a lot of money to improve the airport. Because without the capital needed to fund its big-ticket infrastructure projects, the government needs the private sector to help. Upgrades to the existing terminals will also solve many of the horror stories we encounter. Remember my lost baggage, Terry's long wait in lines, Nash and Francis canceled flights due to air traffic management issues? These were all problems that may have been prevented if the government stayed on top of NAIA's upkeep. From 2010 to 2023, the Manila International Airport Authority or MIA has only spent 2 billion pesos a year to upgrade NAIA's facilities. But Terry thinks we don't need to worry about higher terminal fees just yet. That's because the SMC-led group agreed to split the profits 80-18, with 82% of NAIA's profits going to the Philippine government. So if anything, it's the Philippine government who has the most to gain from NAIA's rehabilitation.
So that is something that no one actually expected. But it also implies that effectively government has such a big stake in rehabilitating NAIA. In terms of the sharing of incomes, it will effectively be government that has most to gain from this undertaking because of this 82% commitment. So this should also provide government with some form of slack or leeway to effectively moderate fees, particularly terminal fees, which it will impose on the public in the course of the concession, particularly because if you have an 82% share in the revenue, you can basically make a computation that you don't need this actual revenue, and it would be better to waive this particular share of the revenue and just reflect it as a part of the terminal fees, which would not increase.
Whenever I fly through NAIA, I can't help but think that Filipino travelers deserve better. And I'm sure you do too. After all, NAIA is our country's main gateway. Not only does it bring Filipinos to different parts of the world, but it's also foreign visitors' first glimpse of the Philippines. We've yet to see whether NAIA's privatization will finally lead to improvements. And as a frequent flyer myself, I certainly hope so. And that was today's episode of Teka Teka. Again, I'm Tatiana Maligro. This episode was edited by Pidoy Blanco. Our Teka Teka executive producer is Jill Caro, and our editor-in-chief is Carl Javier. We also wanted to thank everyone who shared their NAIA horror stories with us. Nash Nashon, Fran Sarmiento, as well as Jeds, PM.Carney, Alquana, and Jan Ruiz on Instagram. Do you know anyone who's flying through NAIA soon? It would be great if you sent them this episode. And of course, don't forget to follow Teka Teka and Puma Podcast on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube. Thanks for listening.